Well, hello, and welcome back. I'm AJ O'Neill. This is Beyond Code Live, and we're in Code Live Beyond Code! Yeah! Alright, so I don't have any Q&A to start with today, or maybe, slash comment responses. I kind of do, in a way, but I kind of don't. Will and I were having this conversation, and I'd really need him to be present in order to kind of figure out what all was going on. But we are kind of bickering about the difference between software engineer versus computer scientist versus, I don't know, I think there was something else in there, basically code monkey and then JITs and yada yada. But I think we were talking past each other a little bit in terms of, I think we're really talking about the same thing. But if he joins in, then maybe we will continue that conversation. But with what we're actually working on right now, let me get back here. Let me get up if I can. I'm gonna get. Do I have a to do in here? Don't forget to update. Yeah, okay. That one's to done more or less, right? Do we have any other to dos? I need to. So first of all, let's just turn this to do over into this. I'm pretty sure we did that one. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to go double check, but we've got drafts syncing. I could have sworn. Let me go into the other folder here. Because I could have sworn I had a running to-do list already. Ah, here it is. Okay. Okay, so we need some sort of draft versioning. We need to not update items that are older than last sync update. We definitely need, I'm going to put towards the top of the list here. Let's see. Draft versioning, I don't know where we're going to get to that. The main thing is, the purpose of draft versioning would be to avoid conflicts. And then we need some sort of... I don't know. We need to be able to preview a previous draft, as in not load it, but to preview it, not save over the current one. That's going to be tough-ish. I mean, it's not obvious what the right way for me to do that is. Yeah. And then we just need to do some general refactoring because the code is getting to be spaghetti code. And I don't like that, but also I don't know enough about, so there's red, green, refactor. You create the problem by having the desire for something to be different than what it is. Green is you make it, that functionality real and available, and then refactor is you make it so that it's nice. So the problem with wanting to refactor this is that I don't quite feel that I've hit green yet on this branch, which is the syncing drafts branch, to be able to say that I'm ready to refactor because I don't know exactly what the parameters are. And maybe I could just spend a little bit of time not coding and thinking through the problems. But you know what they say. 6 hours of coding will save you 5 minutes of planning. So I don't really know that I want to waste 5 minutes of planning when I could spend 6 hours coding. But in all seriousness, I don't quite know what the right solutions are yet. But here's some things I do know. I do know that our app.js is bloated. And I think I know to what degree there's an interaction between blog/blog model and post. So my hope, if I've done this correctly, if we're calling post from blog, then we should never be calling blog from post. So I should not see, hopefully, I do have blog model here. All right. So we've got some bad interactions or some not well thought out interactions or some interactions that need to be moved elsewhere. And I think I know what this is about. Yeah, I think the one that's wrong is I don't think that we should have any need to access post from blog. I think this blog view, let's see, post.serialize. So what's going on there? We've got our tab. So essentially, I want to separate these things out into their different places that they go. But blog and blog model are going to have to go into the same place. So I think this is what's going to happen. I think we're going to take app.js and we're going to rename that to blog.js. And I think that we're going to create a new app.js. So let's just do that. And let's just commit that as its own thing. Rename app.js. That might be something we want to do in another stage. Now, let's take some of this stuff, tab, settings, at least. That doesn't belong here. I think down here, this whole bit where we do all the initializations and all that. Let's see. I think from this point forward, I could be mistaken, but I think from this point forward, what we want is something that has its own thing. Let's see. And this, okay, this we do want to execute on its own. And I think I want to untie those from one another at some point, the blog and the post, because interaction should flow in one direction, not in two directions. If blog uses post, post shouldn't use blog. So we need to find a way either to factor out something that's common between them into a third thing, or we need to, it's just, there's bad architecture there. But anyway, I think I'm just going to take this bit here, and I'm going to bring that out into app.js. Okay, then we need to go update index.html, and blog needs to come before app. And then I guess tab needs to move out as well. Where is tab? Yeah, so this whole thing, that's fine. Tab should not be used. Okay, what's going on here? Tab, 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 tab. Okay, cool. So I don't think, I'm going to separate out app. I think I'm going to take AJ query and put it out into its own thing, maybe. Which is just these couple of functions. It looks like maybe it already is. I wonder if I'm actually requiring that separately. That would be hilarious. But let's go back in here. I think I want to get tab.js. Let's just go ahead and put this in its own thing real quick. And then it needs to call itself, right? No, it can call itself that way. Let's see what happens when I save. Does it stay on the, oh, there we go. It moved. Okay, so tab, which, what is that, an app right now? And then wait, is settings even used? I don't think settings is even used. Whoops. Okay, there's a couple of things that are going wrong here. So this should have use strict in it. Let's go back to tab here. This should have use strict in it. Use strict. Oops. Var tab equals. So I've decided on this when I'm doing variables. Oh, hello. Welcome. Feel free to tell me who you are and what your interest is in joining in today. I really do like to have a little bit of conversation with the people that are watching and have a little bit of chit chat. It feels human, you know. It's nice to not be alone. So I'm AJ. I'd love it if you'd tell me who you are and what you do and that sort of thing. Anyway, so I have decided that I am going to continue to use var for globals. And I think I'm going to use const for only constants, and I'm going to use let for most things. So I am going to be a terrible person who uses all three. Now, buffer to base 64. These things, okay, I don't really like this. I do want, there does need to be a way for me to define this collection. Maybe I just need to create, let's see, base 64 to buffer. I think I just need to create an encodings.js. And I'll just copy over the encodings. So we'll do encodings. Should be encoding or encodings? Encoding, encodings. It's the encoding package. It's the, yeah, let's go with encoding. It's the encoding package, buffer to base 64. So it'll be the encoding package. And then I'm going to move these out. We'll do it this way, var encoding equals like so. And then I'm going to go ahead and make a little iffy to wrap this up so that I can put the use strict inside. And there we are. And then I need to make these available to the broader scope by encoding dot this thing. Yeah, that'll work. Encoding dot this thing. There we are. Okay, and then I could put that out in its own separate place. Kind of seems like maybe I probably should. Okay, we got settings. Settings needs to go out into its own. Oh, that should have had an equals there in both of these cases. So I'll put encoding up higher, but I'm going to pull it out into its own file. And the nice thing about this, so here's something that people don't know about, because people use CDNs and they think that CDNs give them some sort of advantage. And in the traditional sense of what a CDN used to mean before it became this popular buzzword, it does. But most of modern web development is done incredibly ignorantly. And I don't just mean that from the perspective of the individual developers are ignorant, but the people that are building systems build them for ignorance, I guess. I don't know. Hold on. I need to go make this file before I lose my buffer here. Encoding.js. I'll explain what I mean in just a second. But browsers were actually designed pretty well. Yeah, there's a few flaws in them that are fixed only by things such as service workers, but not in the way that they are advertised. Caching works really well, and CDNs are generally designed to defeat caching in the wrong way. So let me just give you an example real quick. This is super, super easy to do. So let's say I have these bunch of script tags right here. There are so many different ways that we could optimize this, and none of them does the developer need to be concerned with. This should really be part of deployment process, not development process. A developer should just be able to include script tags like this, and this should be fine. When it goes to get deployed, it should be turned into a hash like this. And all the places where it's referenced should be fixed. And there should be some sort of syntax to say, well, if you are for some reason referencing a JavaScript file by its name inside of another JavaScript file, say you're doing lazy loading or something, then there should still be some mechanism by which to update that name. But basically, if you just put this as a hash here, then you can set the browser caching to be permanent in a way that it doesn't still make requests and give back 304 not modified, because that would happen with any good web server at all anyway, but such that it's truly permanent. And that's what a CDN should do for you. But because people develop very naively, and because most of the CDNs are geared towards free users, the CDNs are crippled and they don't function as good CDNs. They don't do caching properly. They in fact break caching on purpose. They break proper caching on purpose, because if you're dealing with free users that don't know what they're doing, then your customer support has to deal with free users that don't know what they're doing. And guess how much free users are worth to customer support? Goose egg, because they're not paying. They're free users. So rather than giving good documentation and saying, hey, here's some tools that you can use, things that you ought to do, they break the true functionality of a CDN, and then you end up using 10 different CDNs in your app, and none of them are working properly, and everything's slow. And so then somebody tells you, oh, well, you have to use a bundler. And so then we start pulling all of this stuff that's supposed to be on the web server side. The web servers are perfectly capable of handling extremely well, because web servers and browsers were designed in tandem and have been around for decades and have been able to do all this stuff. You get these instructions that, oh, you're supposed to bundle your code. No. The CDN or the web server is what should have evolved to be doing that. And then when you encounter problems, there should have been documentation that says, oh yeah, everything's going to be hashed. If you need to use a string that gets hashed, then use this other method, but whatever. Anyway, I am talking too fast. I'll have a little caffeine to calm me down. Pop top, my friends. Brought to you by, but not brought to you by, Mountain Dew. I can already feel the calm flowing through me. All right, now I'll stop talking so fast. So we've got our encoding package, and we're going to need a settings package as well. I don't know if no, I'm going to leave that in app for now, because I don't really want to I want to separate things out as I feel that they're being handled relatively well. And I would say that blog itself is being handled relatively well. Blog and post are handled relatively well. Not perfectly, but relatively well. And then what is all this local storage stuff? Is that just... I guess I should move that inside because currently that's not being used stricted. And then what was the one I was just going to plop this in app.js for now. I'm going to plop it inside the use strict for now. Let's plop it below the... Oh, there is nothing below the init functions. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to async function this. And we'll call that good. Okay. Boop. All right. I should give my beta system a little bit more RAM. Oh, also, I'm going to move everything to postmark soon. Gosh, that's going to take a long time when I do that. Seemed unrelated, but I was thinking of cost structures. You know, don't save yourself $5 to increase the time. In fact, I think I'm going to go do that right now. I'm just going to hop on DigitalOcean and give myself more RAM so that it's not taking Prettier in the tooling so long to do these refreshes. Okay. Okay, I'm going to show you something weird real quick, too. I'm going to show you this. Okay, this is bad UX. So here's a video that apparently they want you to watch. So rather than putting a play button on it to let you know, hey, this is something that you can watch and something we want you to watch, instead, when you mouse over it, it gets this play thing as a mouse cursor, which doesn't make sense. Just put a play button. Just put play controls. You know, just put the little thing down here, skip this stupid rounded corner that serves no real purpose, and make it look like a video widget that has a play button right there. What this is, and the video does nothing to, at least use a thumbnail that is somewhat descriptive of what it is you want me to play. Why would I want to watch this? Is it a tutorial? Is it a sales pitch? I don't know what this is. Anyway, I'm going to bring this back over here and log on in. And let me go to my beta instance. And okay, there's a couple things that wants native-like terminal access to your droplet from the browser. Yes, I do want to enable that. I haven't enabled that on this one yet. So I got a gig of RAM. That seems like that should be more than enough. Also, so I'm gonna actually I'll do this over in the other window. So I'm gonna install some new tool that they want me to install. Oh, bless me. Hopefully you like my burps. Good news is you can't smell them from there. But it's okay. They generally don't smell, only when I'm sick. Like that one time that I stopped the stream and put up the biological difficulty sign. Anyway, you can't see what I'm doing on the other screen here, but I'm just going into my settings for this. In fact, I am going to, let's see. Oh, do I want to shut it down? I wish I could just pause it and add more RAM that way, or if they could add more RAM live. Okay, I'm not going to do this right now. Well, What all do I have running on this thing? Let's see. We've got the... Okay, oh, I did the smart thing. I actually ran the system service with watchexec. That was a smart idea. So webinstall.dev/watchexec and also webinstall.dev/system... Serviceman, not system. Serviceman, if you're interested in that setup. Okay, don't need to be worried about that right now. Pocket ID, don't need to worry about that. What is this? Oh, this was the old... Yeah, we're not even doing this. Oh, this is so old. Okay, but... where is this coming from? Go... AJ, look here. And then let's see, what was my... What's my path on this? Oh, and I'm in bash, not fish on that one. Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to push D into there, and I'm going to run this if I'm going to continue to do the Pocket build. So basically, I'm just stopping. I'm figuring out what I've got here in terms of my services. Okay, node scripts development. I'm going to take this as well. Whoops. Let's go into that AJ look here. Didn't I? What? Oh, no, it was to do. It was to do AJ look here. So I had some other stuff I was working on months ago. I think this project is kind of more or less abandoned at this point. Well, it's not abandoned. It's just put on indefinite hold. Let's see. What else am I doing here? Oh, gosh. Holy moly. What has this been doing? I hope nobody was using that. Oh, goodness. Well, I guess I'll find out if they were. So this was an old demo environment that I've been running for, I don't know, probably about a year now. Can't be quite that long, but about that long. So in case anybody gets back to me and says, hey, do you know anything about the development server going down? I will say, you guys were supposed to have moved off of that a year ago. That was my personal server, not the real development server. Anyway, I'm going to make sure that I'm out of... Okay, so now... just closing out. Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D. Control D. There we are. So I'm completely out of that server. Everything that was up and running is now shut down. And I am going to go into it and give it more RAM and maybe even more CPU. Because I think it's at $5 a month right now. Hello, hello. I'll see if I can bring this over to the other screen. I just don't want to leak, you know, things that are important. But let's see. Access, power, volumes, power, turn off droplets. So first of all, let me log in. And let me do the good old sudo shutdown -h now. So that will power off the virtual machine. Okay, I think I can show you this over here. I don't think I'm going to have to reset any keys or anything. All right, so it says you want to turn off the droplet. Oh, interesting. They recommend shutting it down with power off. I wonder why they don't sudo shut that. Maybe that is just an alias for that. In any case, let me double check that I cannot get into it. Yep, it's just dropping packets at this point, so that's great. Let's go ahead and turn it off. This is beta. Yeah, I am turning off beta. I'm giving myself more RAM because Prettier and some of the other tooling is running just a touch slow, and so I'm going to resize my dev instance so that I am not dealing with these little nits. Okay, disk, CPU, and RAM. I don't need any more disk. Let's bump this up. Let's go ahead and give it 2 CPUs. Yeah, we'll bring that up to $15. 2 gigabytes of RAM, 2 CPUs. Sure, let's do it. Or 4 gigs of RAM for $20 a month. Let's try out with 2 gigs of RAM, 2 CPUs. Let's see how that works. And if that's still feeling a little sluggish, then maybe I'll consider the 4 gigs. But I like to dev in the raw. I don't dev on localhost because localhost doesn't tell you crap. Localhost doesn't tell you what things are really working like. It doesn't tell you what the browser security policies are really going to be. Localhost is just a bad development environment, and it removes you from reality. So I think you can even the SSH plugins for VS Code probably work decently well now. But I don't think that it's a good idea to dev on localhost. You're creating problems for yourself, and you're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies when you're developing on localhost. So have a dev server, pay the money for it. It's worth it. Get your employer to pay the money for it some way or another. Anyway, we should be able to turn this back on. If maybe I need to go to power here. Oh, it's still resizing. Okay, so that might take a minute. And I'm going to take this minute to go ahead and look at VS Code again and see if the SSH tools have gotten any better. Productivity tips and speed hacks. Interesting. Developing on remote machines using SSH. Source code, blah, 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 blah. OpenSSH compatible, yada, yada, glibc. Huh, interesting. Why would it need glibc? I think we should have learned by now that shared libraries are a lie. Everything needs to be compiled static. This is the way it ought to be. Hey, I see, we got some people joining in on the stream. I'm AJ. Who are you? I'd love to know your name, where you're from, what your interest is in either Node or this blog system I'm building or the encryption that we're going to be dealing with. By the way, the reason I put the little Dogecoin on there is because the passphrase system is BIP39, which comes from Bitcoin standards and can be used for Dogecoin and other things. So that's just my little nod. We're not really going to be doing anything with cryptocurrency here. Just so, okay, there we go. So it's, we got more RAM. We got 2 CPUs now, which means that I should have a dedicated CPU essentially just for, it doesn't work out this way, but just for the dev environment itself. So now if I go to connect to this again, things should be a little snappier. It might take 30 seconds before we can connect. Oh, I see. I lost somebody over that. We're not really going to be dealing in cryptocurrency statement. That's okay. That's okay. Didn't need you. You go do your cryptocurrency thing. Saw the Dogecoin, got excited. To the moon, man. To the moon. Okay, cool. Here we are. So let me go ahead and start at my screen again. By the way, this is one of those things that you should just have committed to memory if you're using SSH. And I'm going to put it in the chat just so everybody can see it and keep it forever and ever and ever. And X marks the spot. R like a pirate's. And I forgot what the S. I had something for the S as a mnemonic to remember this. But screen-XRS. Awesome. Sails away. Sails away. Maybe that's what it is. R. X marks the spot. R. Sails away. And I think and then awesome is the name of the screen. I just always call it awesome. Anyway, let's go in there. And actually, before I do that, let me go into fish. Let's see. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted to do, actually. Go back. Okay, well, there we are, like this. All right, fish. Fish. And then Control A, C to create a new screen. There we go. And there we go. I probably ought to just set fish as my default shell, but I tend to leave bash as my default shell and then go into fish manually, and then I just stay there for decades and decades and decades. All right, so we need to go into serve, beta, bliss. No, this is bliss API. All right, there we are. And I suppose this is what I want to be my development tab. Actually, I'm going to go into public on that, and then we'll get back to the code soon. And then here we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go into bliss. And then we don't need to go into public. I think what I'm going to do is on this one, I'm just going to keep open the logs. And that's what that screen will be for. And maybe actually I should open up another screen so I can do one screen where I'm watching the logs. In fact, my first screen should probably be where I watch the logs because that one's not going to change and that's always going to be necessary. So let's go ahead and make this one where I watch the logs. Then we'll make this one where I work in the public folder, and we'll make this one where I work in the server folder. And so then I can switch back and forth with Control A, P for previous, Control A N for next, Control A C for creating a new screen. And then for those of you that haven't been using Screen, or if you use something other people recommend, I forget what it's called. What's that thing that other people recommend? You know it, don't you? But I don't use that one because I don't know why I don't use it. I guess I just haven't been given a compelling case as why to use it. I typically don't do the screen splitting in anything. In Vim, in Screen, I just open up multiple tabs. So that's how I roll. And it works for me. Okay, so now let's get back to our encryptions. We've got our encoding. What all did we have here? I just moved something around. I think it was in app. I was moving settings. I moved settings into here. And then, is there a place where we're using settings? There must be. I think I was using it in the sign-in. Okay, no, we've got it in the index.html. That's great. So just as a recap on my general structure for this that I've been going with now that I feel is a pretty good structure for what this is. Oh, and I do need to, hold on, I need to do one more thing. I need to look for this guy. I think I was just exposing him that way. Yeah, I don't need to expose him that way anymore. I was exposing him that, I was leaving this in the global so that some reason or other. And I should probably go ahead and, well, if I need to debug, I'll just go back. Sometimes I expose things in the global just so I can debug with them easier. Okay, that still wasn't as fast as I would have liked, but I don't know what else to do. I could just have a strict development instance and then move. I've got a bunch of beta stuff on here, so it uses a little bit of CPU and a little bit of RAM. Let's see what we're up to. Yeah, so we were definitely maxed out on another one. If we only had one vCPU and just idle. Oh, but we've got liquid soap is running on this. I think I should stop that. So yeah, let's go ahead and stop liquid soap. I don't remember which. Do I have that in here? Liquid soap. Okay, so let's do this then. Let's do sudo system ctl stop liquid soap, and I'm going to go put that like that. Yeah, and then disable. So I've probably for the last year just been running the same loop on a couple of songs for a demo server. In fact, I'm going to go message some people real quick just to make sure they know that if the thing went down, why it went down. In fact, oh, I may have been removed from this channel. Okay, no, I haven't. So I just need to let them know real quick. Hey everybody, just want to let you know I've taken down my personal dev server with the liquid soap stuff. Liquid soap is for radio broadcast. So if you wanted to create an online radio station, liquid soap is one of the things you'd use along with IceCast and a couple other things. Liquid soap stuff. If anything breaks, let me know. I can bring it back up. But you definitely should have stopped using that a year ago. Stopped using that 6 months ago. And then I'm gonna actually tag people to make sure that people know. This was the last. Let's see. Yeah, I think all of these people are good people to tag. All right, cool. So then I'm going to copy these two commands into something else real quick, just so that if I need to bring up all these things, I can bring them back up, hopefully without issue. And at some point I want to write a blog article about that, because I think there's a fair amount that I can show there, because it's just generic information. It doesn't reveal the specific process that was being used for the client that I was doing that for. But just knowing how to get a radio station set up and the general process of how to put the hooks in place to be able to get the next track loaded and what that stuff is, I think is kind of a cool thing. So anyway, give me a second. I'll get back to the task at hand. How do I block this person? Add to block list and restream chat. There we go. Yay! Blocked. I don't know how Twitch doesn't have those people blocked already. All right. Anyway, so to those of you that are tuning in on YouTube right now, hi, I'm AJ. Do you want to tell me who you are? Probably already know who you are. You're probably one of the regulars. One of the lurkers, regular lurkers. But yeah. Anyway, so let's get back to this yet again. So, okay, I moved the settings. Settings is now an app, and I'm just going to put this here because I'm still figuring out what settings is going to mean and what tabs is going to mean. I'm just going to put these here as a reminder that I probably do want to pull those out. At some point, I probably want to move app all the way down to the last. I guess it doesn't. Well, same reasons that I chose to put it here before still apply, in the sense that the app can be used without signing in, and these three things are only necessary for signing in. And I don't know about that encoding, buff 64, all that stuff. Let me check and see. Encoding. What is that necessary for? This app stuff. Okay, let me move this one down then. That's what I thought. All right, so that's a little minor refactoring. Nothing major there. Just moving files around so that we don't have to dig through a bunch of unrelated stuff. Okay, so now I should have my debug console open. I should be able to click GitHub sign in. I shouldn't get any errors other than the refresh cookie error, which doesn't look like we got, so we're all good there. I should be able to go to settings. Oh wait, something did go wrong. Tab is not defined. Okay, so let's go figure out. I moved tab somewhere. Tab.js. Oh, I did move tabs out into tab.js. Okay. All right, so I did already move that one. So let's go ahead and put that here then. Yeah. And I could call tabs router.js because that's essentially what it behaves as right now. Okay. So there we go. And then something's still wrong. It still thinks tab is not defined over in sign-in. Why would that be? Let's go take a look. Tab.js. Tab is up here at the top. So it should be defined. Just, is that tab or tabs? Tab. Probably should call it tabs. Or I could call it router. I'm not going to call it router right now, so let's move it to tabs.js. Okay. And then let me go ahead and just stage all of these changes. Yes, I do want to stage all of those changes. That seems appropriate. Okay, because I'm refactoring things, right? Okay, so we do the GitHub sign in, and now we get the logout button. We can go to settings, we can show the passphrase, or we can hide it. Huzzah. So back to everything working as it did work last time it was working. I'm going to let my ADHD take over for one more second. Squirrel. I got the lovely Laws of UX poster. So, let's see. All right. Can you see it? Can you see it? You can kind of see it. But yes, I paid the big bucks. and I got the Laws of UX poster, and then I put it in a super, super cheap frame. But if you're interested in the laws of UX, which you should be, whether or not you do UX, basically, here's the thing. Let me get back to the mic because you can't hear me very well. We live in a broken society. We know this. We can tell from certainly the election cycles that have happened in the last decade. But things are just so wrong. UX does not mean UI. They're the same as the difference between backend and front end. UX is an engineering mindset. UI is a design mindset. They're completely different mindsets. They are dissimilar. Now, you can certainly be an engineer that understands design as well as John Jablonski is. I might be saying his name entirely wrong or even the wrong name. But that's in the link in the doobly-doo, creedsofcraftsmanship.com. There's a link to lawsofux.com and some other important archaeological finds of the 21st century, as I dub them. Okay, I won't get into it any further. I've mentioned it before, and I finally got the poster, so I'm excited about it. I get to look at it there and not really do much about it because I don't work really that much in UX, but I do like to... People who claim to be UX people that have no idea what they're talking about, I can quote the names of the thing, the thing, the different laws. I have a handy reference nearby when I need it, and I can lean on the shoulders of experts. So when people are like, "Oh, but you don't know anything about UX because you're a developer," I can be like, "Well, Doherty's law says, or Doherty's threshold says, this is why this is a reasonable thing to do." That one is why things should load within a certain amount of time. Okay, so getting back to what the real deal, or the real reason for being here is. So we've got this stuff's working. The next thing we need to do is get the updates to happen reasonably. So, I was trying to think of how this should work. And it seems like if I do an update that I'm not quite sure what I want this to be. I think there should be a last... We should have two different sync times. We should have upsync and downsync. That's the simplest solution to this problem. In the face of ambiguity, refuse the temptation to guess. I'm not quite sure how to update the sync time to be correct, so break it into two times. Problem not necessarily solved, but kicked down the road, which is what we want to do with problems that we don't really have a good immediate solution for. So every time that I sync up, I should do two things. I should change the updated at date to, bless me, the canonical sync date. All right, so what does that mean? That kind of means this may be the rare exception to the else rule. Okay, let's see. Let resp. So the rare exception to the else rule, in case you don't know, using else is a code smell. If you use else, you're probably doing it wrong. This is a rare occasion where either one thing is going to happen or the other thing is going to happen. So this is what an else statement should look like. An else statement should essentially never be more than 10 lines long. And if it is 10 lines long, most likely you're doing it wrong. Most likely. If your else statement is more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 is a really good threshold because maybe you have 3 things that, if you're really stretching it, you really need to do 3 things here. And we can make this even shorter. There we go. There we go. This is what an else statement should, an if else should look like. And we could do a little bit different. We could make a doc do stuff. We could do a let doc do stuff, and then we could assign it to doc create, and then we could say if, or we could assign it to doc update, and then we could, I'll show you what we could do. But this is kind of going into the realm of practicality beats purity. But let's say that we did it like this. Let do x equals doc update. And then we could simply have here do x equals doc create. And then we could get rid of all of this. And then we could just have do x post. So let resp equals, whoops, what did I do? I didn't mean to do that. So we could do this to get rid of our else. But this, it's not necessarily bad, but at this point I would say it's less clear. I have done this before with HTTP versus HTTPS, where I just say, we're going to assume it's HTTPS, but if we test and we see the URL starts with HTTP : and not HTTPS, then we'll assign it because we have a default assignment, whatever. But I'm going to go back. This is a rare exception, that happens very rarely, where else is an appropriate tool because it's really is what we're trying to do. Let me go back. So this reads well. It makes sense. We're going to do either this or that. But yeah, if you are beyond 10 lines, I can almost guarantee you, and certainly say within a few nines, that you're doing it in a less readable, less coherent way. So let's say post.updated at is equal to resp.updated at. That would make sense. And then we need to set some sort of, where's that local storage bit for, okay, so here's last sync. We need to change this into last upsync and last downsync. So this would be last sync up, and we could call this last sync up. So this would be never. And then I'd like to replace last sync. Let me just go ahead and see if I can do this real quick. Last sync with last sync down. That way we have 2 different sync directions, and the reason for that is that we can't reliably say that while we are uploading something, that something new isn't being created that we still ought to download. But then when we pull things down, we will need to check that the thing that we're pulling down is older than or is newer than the thing that we have locally. So I'm going to need to check on that as well. So we are going to have to do a little bit of checking, but I think that it's all going to work out for the better. Okay. Last sync down. Okay, so where is the actual bit where we're, let's see, last sync down, last sync down. And I kind of want to put this in a key. Oh, there's just a bunch of garbage in here. Oh my goodness. Let last sync down key equals. I don't know if we really need this. I'm going to leave it because it's only used in 2 places and it is clear enough. And I have to change it. If I have to change it in 2 places, so be it. It is essentially functioning as a symbol at this point. That should be a const anyway. Okay. All right, so here's our sync hook. And we're guaranteeing, let's see, doc update. Where's that at? And I'm returning resp.json here. And then I've got doc create. Okay. So this is looking good. And then we need to be a little bit cautious because we need to know a couple of things. One, if not refs.uuid or not resp.updated at, then something is wrong. And we could go a little bit further than this because we could say if not new date dot value of, or more appropriately is nan, as I believe what that will become. Well, I think not is good enough because this could be as nan or it could be 0. In any case, it represents that something went wrong if we don't get a value of out of that. Let's see. Okay, and it does want to just get rid of the parentheses. I think it's more clear to read with the parentheses, but whatever. Then we're gonna have to return really this hook failed. And at this point, I'm going to say that we need to alert the user that something went wrong. Sync was not successful. And then to do, this needs to go somewhere where something becomes of it. Okay. But if that all works out, then it's unlikely, the UUID should never change, but we could just have this be the same for either one, because whether the doc create or the doc update, whatever, UUID should be there, updated at should be there. And then here's the thing, is it's possible that something changes locally while it's syncing, but I'd kind of like to say while it's syncing, we're just going to block off the UI and say, hey, you can't make edits while it's syncing. And if you do, they're just going to get overridden. I've been thinking a little bit about what my framework might look like. Oh, hello, welcome for joining in. I'm AJ. Who are you? What's your interest in Node or the blog or whatever it is that caused you to join in? I'd love to know. I like to have a little bit of chat and be human and real. And when I've actually got people that are engaging with me, it just feels better and it makes for good conversation. So please do chime in with what you're at, where you're at and what you're doing. Anyway, now I lost my thought. What was I saying? So we don't want to let updates happen in the UI while we're syncing. So we could say that's just not allowable. Oh, and I was going to say, so I've been thinking about what if I develop a framework for front-end code, what it might look like. And I actually do like the idea of React hooks. I don't like the implementation in terms of the magic, how it hides things away and has these side channels. And of course, the whole putting HTML and CSS and images and all sorts of weird stuff into JavaScript, I completely disagree with. But I do kind of like the general idea of hooks that you define, here is essentially an event handler. You take a value, you wrap the value, and you say, well, you don't wrap the value, you wrap the setter for the value. And you say, here's essentially an event handler. Whenever I want to set this value and have it and cause it to have a ripple effect, I'm going to use this setter, and then the setter will set the value and cause the ripple effect to happen. I think that that's generally a good pattern. It doesn't feel 100% native necessarily, but in terms of a UI, I think it makes sense for the UI. Just don't get your model logic and your controller logic mixed up in that mess too much, because they're you know, you have to expose it in some way, and I think it'll be all right. Anyway, so the thing that I need to change here then is, let me just put my little X's here to let me know this is where I want to be. But I'm going to go search local storage dot get item. Do we have a dot set item? Local storage dot set. And I need to remember the encryption key. Sync down. Last sync dot value of. Okay, that looks good to me. All right, so here we are. We're going to go back here and we're going to say last sync up. So this is what we're doing. And then last sync up dot value of. And I guess what we need to do as well, because we should be able to do this, we should be able to do new date. Yeah, like, yeah, this looks better anyway. This reads better anyway. So last sync up, maybe? I don't know if I, let's put an underscore in front of it. Because this is the proposed change, it's not necessarily a real change, and that's why I'm putting the underscore in front. We don't want to change the actual variable. This is a way that sometimes I do temporary variables, put an underscore in front to say this is representative of the other thing, but it's not yet the other thing. Okay, so if this parses out all right, then now would be the time to say, okay, last sync up is equal to last sync up. And then this would be correct. And so at the front of this then, what we want to be able to check is okay, so if we don't have, if this thing has never been updated, then we want to do the create. Otherwise, we want to say if last sync up, we want to say post dot updated at, and this is probably going to be, we'll need to do dot value of here, is greater than last sync up, then we'll do this. Again, you know, what's the other else here then? So else if, again, this is an extremely rare case. You know, using an else in general is a code smell. Using an else if is a very strong code smell. But in this particular case, it makes real perfect sense because we have three possible conditions. That maybe at this point it should be a switch, but this doesn't quite feel like the right thing for a switch. Because if we have never synced it, regardless of what the date is on it, go ahead and create it. Otherwise, if the sync date on this document is greater than the last sync date, then update the document, else return. Now, here's what we need to be wary of for this, potentially, is when we go to sync things, now we need to make sure that they are synced in updated at order. So let me just put that as this needs to be a comment in here. It's intuitive enough, but it needs to be explicitly stated for myself and anyone else that might ever work on this in the future. So Rasputin Rock asks, what you doing? And my answer is, I am working on a blog system that has a couple of unique features. So this is actually live right now, bliss.js.org. I'll go ahead and throw that in the comments for you. So this is the one that's live. You can go use this. You can use it to keep notes. You can use the Bliss template that's already available. What I'm working on is the ability to sync drafts between computers. So here on this computer, I have a bunch of drafts. Some of these I may have actually posted already, but this is kind of become how I keep notes to myself and start drafts of what will be blog articles. But they're only on this computer, so I can access them on my desktop. And then I have another list that's almost as long on my other computer. And what I want is that when I log in with GitHub Login, so this is the live version, it doesn't have these features yet. But when I log in with GitHub Login, this becomes a GitHub sign-in button. We got post and settings. Then I should be able to upload a copy of all of these blog articles or posts. And then I should be able to download the one from the other computer. I should be able to get them in sync. And then what's unique about this is that I have a passphrase. So this one's actually a bit long. I only intended to be 12 words long. And so if I'm logged in with GitHub, that I still won't be able to download my drafts. I will actually have to decrypt them with my passphrase. So my passphrase is generated automatically, and then I use that to share between computers. And the reason for this is there are issues with hosting public unencrypted data, and that you have to be aware of what the data is that a user puts up. And it's not particularly important for this project necessarily, because this is just blogs. What could possibly go wrong? But in general, client-side encryption is something that I'm interested in, and I'm going to be integrating in other projects. So the syncing process right now, as of this moment, when I click the GitHub sign-in button, it will do the syncing process at that time. And I think what I'm going to do is put a sync all drafts button or somewhere on here. I'm not exactly sure where yet. But I'm also, right now, as you type, it saves into local storage on every single keystroke, which is fine until you get to about, 64 kilobytes. So, works perfectly well. But I'm going to have that debounced so that it only saves every few seconds. And this will make it so that you could have long posts that are longer than, say, 64 kilobytes without having lag as you start to type. Because if it gets to start to get long, then it blocks on every keystroke, which is not desirable. So I'm going to debounce that. And then I'm not sure if I want to debounce further for the syncing. So it debounces, say, 5 seconds for the local storage and then 30 seconds for the syncing, or what that needs to be. I kind of want the sync to be manual because I don't want to be overriding things. There needs to be some way to version it, essentially. And so it needs to be manual to some respect, or have a very long debounce, as it were, because I certainly don't want a new version on every keystroke. But if somebody wants to mark something as a version, I want to be able to do that. And again, it's really not important for syncing of drafts, but there's broader stuff that I want to do with this, and this is a nice toy project for me to experiment with that. So, yeah, and feel free to ask other questions. You can ask me other development questions that are unrelated. This is a personal project. It's a Saturday. I do stream actual work, but in this case, I'm free to go on random tangents. Okay, so anyway, the thing that I need to document here is, note, sync hook should be called on posts in ascending updated at order. Not should, must. Ascending updated at order. And then why not? Otherwise, drafts will be lost. Otherwise, drafts will be older than last sync up, and be skipped / lost. So no, I'm not using framework. I'm just doing straight up JavaScript. I think that I might want to develop a framework at some point, but I am not using a framework. This is not something that it needs a framework. So I just have functions that I've created. And this particular file I'm working in is a little bit spaghetti. Some of the other files are a bit cleaner, but this is one where I've kind of been adding features and I'm not quite sure where they fit yet. And so I'm just working on them in one place and then I'm going to move them out. So for example, this post sync hook function, I don't know whether it really belongs to the post model or the post view or not, but it's in here right now. And this is not the file where the rest of the post stuff is. Yeah, so this is all just plain JavaScript. There's no framework. This will run in any browser, and there's no build step. Anytime I want something to be updated, I just Command R, boom, refresh, and good to go. So that's how I like to roll. Oh, interesting. Past is not defined. Where I must have just made that typo just now. Where did that? Is not defined. Oh, past. It's supposed to be post. Good. Let's see. Past. There we go. Post. Okay. So now I need to go fix that problem that I just documented. Let's see. All right. So now we need to sort this instead. So I'm going to take A and B of these IDs, and I am going to have to sort them. So let's call it post A and post B, and this is going to be A and B. Or maybe I could go AID and BID. Yeah, that kind of looks weird. So this will be post B, and then we're going to need to do, hold on just 1 second. Where was I at on this part? Rest updated at, oh, and this was supposed to be to ISO string, I think. I need to double check on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what that was supposed to be. Let me just look real quick in the application tab and see how did I save updated. Oh, it's not updated at, it's just updated. Huh, interesting that I chose to do it that way. Normally I do updated at. And I'm pretty sure on the server side, let me go check on the server side, that I do have this. What am I looking at right now? This appears to be, I don't know, there we go. Okay, I did Control A in to go to the next screen, and then I need to go take a look in probably, maybe it's app.js. Yeah, this looks like the right place. Updated at, okay. So I'm going to do Control AP to go to the previous screen, and now I'm back in my other code. Actually, let me do Control A in. Let me get out of here so that we can see the directory, and then Control AP, go back. Okay, so this should be correct. Let me go check updated at where else am I using that? That's response, so post. All right, that's right. Okay, so at some point I'm going to want to fix that because this now feels wrong to be mix and match with updated and updated at. I don't know how I came to that because normally I use updated at, but whatever. That's a little idiosyncrasy that's I'll just have to fix. All right, now I'm going to go to my JavaScript cheat sheet where I have, because I always forget what the right way to do the sort is. JavaScript. Where's my JavaScript cheat sheet? I thought it would be on the first page here. I just edited it the other day, I thought. There's my node cheat sheet. Is it in there? Let me see. There's my bash cheat sheet. Got a lot of cheat sheets. I will be moving over to Bliss, but for right now they're here. Oh, there. Here we go. Sort. So if we want to sort ascending, we do A minus B as the return value. That makes perfect sense with this because we are dealing with numbers. So we will do return post A, and this will be new date dot updated or 0 dot value of minus, same thing but post B. Oh, and is this, it looks like my whoa, that's not what I wanted to do. Hold on. Let me bring this back. There we go. That's correct. All right. And then maybe we could do this a little bit better. We could call it date A equal to this. I think this will, this reads fine. Y'all tell me what you think. I think this reads fine. And maybe it should be empty string here because this is actually not a number. And so this is confusing because we have the ISO string on the left and we have the number on the right. So I'm going to do this 1970 dash 01 dash 01 T000000.000Z. And I'm going to do it like that. That way, it's more clear what the 0 value actually is. It's less likely to confuse a reader in the future. Somebody asked me, what's the difference between computer science and software engineering? Decisions like these are the difference between computer science and engineering. Computer scientists might say, oh, it's better to put 0 here. Software engineering. A software engineer is going to optimize for readability and fewer mistakes between the human and the program. 443 444. I don't know what you mean by 443 444. Oh, you're referring to line numbers. Got it. Why not make it a function? I don't exactly know why I would make this into a function because it just would add more overhead and indirection. This is my rule of thumb. And so creedsofcraftsmanship.com. The link to that is in the doobly-doo. I have got a lot of good stuff there. But I would advise, if you're thinking that these two things are so similar that they should be abstracted into a function, then I would advise that you take a look at the wet dry aha link that's on creedsofcraftsmanship.com, which is Kent C. Dodds came up with the aha, and it's something that I'd been thinking about and wanting to figure out how to express, and I wanted to make a little acronym for it, but then he did it and got something out there that is absolutely perfect and explains it really well. My rule of thumb is something needs to be done 3 times before it is worthy of abstraction, because abstraction makes it more difficult for the reader, and it doesn't necessarily make you less error prone. If you're doing something 3 to 4 times, that's where I'd say it might be worth looking into. Is this a don't repeat yourself scenario? Is this a let's create an abstraction scenario? But if you're doing something twice, generally, I would say it's not the right scenario for that. If you encounter a problem or you know it to be true otherwise, by all means, do it. But here we are. And somebody has asked before, and this is one of those things where clear is better than clever. This is not necessarily clear. Reduce is intended for taking things that you can sum together, but reduce happens to work as a poor man's for each async. So awaiting P and having a promise resolve means that I can turn this whole thing into a promise and sequence it so that it goes one at a time and not encounter sequences, which is the appropriate thing to do for this. And maybe I should, I don't know, I have to think about this. Oh wait, is that doesn't need to be awaited. It looks like it could need to be awaited, but it doesn't because this is actually synchronous. The post model.save. Okay, and I gotta think about this a little bit because I'm assuming that what I'm going to want to do here is set the last sync up to the date of the article, but I don't know if that's really true. Maybe we shouldn't do this. And we should base it purely on our local time. I think that's what we should do. Last sync down should be based on the remote time. So the remote knows the last time it gave us stuff was time X. And so we want to pull from its time X. But locally, we only want to push up from our time Y. And so I think that we actually don't need to take the updated at into consideration from the remote, because really our local is what matters. If we've changed something locally, we don't want to mix and match dates, because if it's been a while, if I was offline and I was making updates and things weren't syncing and I come back online, the remote's updated at date is going to be relative to when it was updated on the remote, because otherwise you could just spoof dates and willy-nilly, and not that that matters in this particular application, but that's not something that in general you should do, and I can't think of an advantage to doing it. You don't trust clients. You don't do it. Don't trust clients. If you're the server, you trust yourself. You don't trust clients for times. You don't trust clients for anything unless you've authenticated it in advance, such as doing a signature on the server and sending it out to the client, and the client gives you back something that is signed, which would be an interesting way of doing some of these date stamps. But in any case, I think I actually want to keep the last sync up relative to the local syncing times, not the remote's syncing times. Because otherwise, like I said, when we go to update things that maybe it's been a day and then I open up my laptop, well, then the last sync up date is going to get updated to when it's synced, which is not necessarily the time that the article itself was modified. So I think this is better and more accurate for multiple computers trying to sync information. Okay, so we'll leave that at that. And we're calling the sync hook, which this is not necessarily where this should go, but this is relatively correct. We put things in the right order because this is important. And then maybe this is not where this should exist. Maybe this entire thing should exist here. And then what have we got with the last sync up over there? I don't know. I'm going to leave it there for now. But this kind of feels like maybe this belongs as the responsibility of this function. But again, I don't need to get to refactoring this to that level right now. We just need to get to red-green refactor. I only use UTC time zones. However, if you need to go between time zones or you need to represent time and you want to do it in a very lightweight way, I'm going to go ahead and give you this link. It's xtz.js, otherwise known as simply, at root xtz. I think that's what it's published as. Yeah, well, okay. It's tzjs xtz.js. I think I call it xtz.js to publish to npm. But this is the library that I recommend using, of course, because it's the one that I wrote. And the reason I wrote it is because I wanted it to be small, vanilla.js, and to not include that the other libraries that are like this include a ton of dependencies, but browsers have been updated to have time zone information in them. The time zone information is not accessible in a convenient way, but it is accessible in a way that, although slightly hacky, you basically have to handle an array of time parts, which is a little bit weird. But other than the fact that you have to handle an array of time parts, all of the parts are labeled correctly, so you can get guaranteed results regardless of locale by using INTL date format. And so If you need to handle time zones, this is what I'd recommend using, unless for some reason you want to use something else, in which case by all means do it, but you're not going to find anything else that is simpler in its implementation and its use of native browser capabilities, as opposed to bringing in tons and tons of dependencies and time zone maps, etc. You don't need those things. And it handles daylight savings properly. I don't know if it handles leap seconds properly, but I haven't had a case to worry about leap seconds. Obviously, time zone changes come up all the time. I don't know, leap seconds are so obscure, and I don't usually deal at second resolution, so I haven't worried about that yet. But I don't think any of the libraries deal at that level of resolution anyway. Leap seconds. Okay, so I'm saving the thing. Now what we should see is if I refresh this, there's one last time it's going to sync everything up to the server. Oh, the AHA article, check. Oh, you're on Twitter. I'm not Twitter, Twitch. So you don't have the doobly-doo with the description. It is creedsofcraftsmanship.com. And I'm typing this out to you. That is where I keep, because we get lots of questions through the streams. And so I decided to start collecting the things that I commonly refer to as good guiding principles. And I put that in a Git issue, and then eventually I'm going to make it its own website similar to Agile Manifesto, 12-Factor App, et cetera, et cetera. But for right now, creedsofcraftsmanship.com just links to that Git issue that has links to other talks. These are all things on software engineering, on guiding code principles, things that I truly, truly believe in. And I did just do a talk that is now, let me go here. We're going to go to YouTube. I'm going to put this on the Beyond Code channel as well. But for right now, it is on Utah Node.js is where I've uploaded it presently. Zen of Python, Creeds of Craftsmanship. And there's the live version and there is the edited version. So I will link you to this momentarily, but whenever I link to things, I've learned to link from the playlist, because then, it keeps people captured and engaged on whatever channel it is that I'm shoving down their throats. So there's my Zen of Python one as well. That's anyway, kind of a little bit off topic from where we're at. Anyway, so I refreshed this thing. We don't need to worry about the refresh token. I haven't implemented refresh tokens yet, so that error is totally expected. Let me go ahead and just Command K to clear this out. By the way, Command K works in just about everything to clear your screen. You will find that the core Unix and Linux keyboard shortcuts work across all sorts of applications. For example, hitting slash almost anywhere in any Unix application and lots of web applications, hitting slash will take you to the search functionality or start the search functionality. And Command K will clear out lots of things. Anything that has some sort of logging or console, Command K generally clears it out. K for clear, because. All right, I'm going to get out of these things here. All right, and then what do we get to? Cannot read UUID. That's totally okay. I probably just have a little typo here. But let's see what did happen. So it did go grab some stuff. And I think if I'm doing millisecond resolution, then I should be fine to say greater than, not greater than or equals to. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that because otherwise I think there's going to be problems with syncing. Now this looks like updated app was fine. UUID is there. So resp.json should have been perfect for this. But, I know where I went wrong. So resp.json, it needs to be resp.json. And then I need to get, oops. And I don't know that I want to do that catch here. Whoops, hold on, let me undo this. Okay, I'm not going to do that in the attempt refresh place. That was not actually the place that I'm wanting to do this for. I don't want to do it there. Okay, most of these are not actually what I'm looking for. Doc create. Okay, so, oh, and I didn't do await here. Again, the reason, so let me show you why I always put await in front of anything that's a promise. This is a general rule I believe that everybody should live by. There's going to be lots of contrarians in the JavaScript community. They're going to say, oh, no, don't do this. But again, it's about software engineering. It's about being principled and making smart choices that are clearer to the reader, your future self, etc. It's not about being cool or hip. It's about being precise. So I decide, oh, wait, you know what I actually need to do? I need to get from this the body. So I call rest.json. I do let JSON equals, say like this, and then I'm going to return json.body. What error did I just create for myself? I forgot to put in the await. Now if I put in the await, it makes perfect sense. But if I had had the await already here, if I just have as a general rule, I'm always going to await something that is asynchronous. Now some people are, oh, well, you know, you don't need to have return await, blah, blah, blah. If you're using await at all, if you're using await, then you should always await anything that is a promise or that could be a promise. Because then when I drop this like that, the await stays there. I don't have the possibility of introducing an error. So you always want to, well, you may or may not, but I always want to write code in a way that it is easy for the reader to understand. If the reader was not familiar with this API, because, for example, many people aren't familiar with fetch, and it would be intuitive enough to believe that rest.json simply gives you back the JSON. That's reasonable to believe. But if you put the await in front, it is a signal to myself and all future readers of the code, this indeed is asynchronous. And then when you go to add more code to it, you won't make the mistake of forgetting the await there. So I try to do that. Occasionally I forget, as I had done there, but it's a general rule of thumb that I follow. Okay, so I do see... so I try to add them. I'm going to respond to comments in just a second. Give me just 1 second. Let me refresh and see if this fixes that problem, and then I'll respond to those comments. Okay, let's see what I got here. So did it work? Okay. Now what? I'm a little bit confused. Because since there was an error there, so last sync up, I want this to be gone. Okay, I'm going to respond to comments and then I'm going to debug this. But basically, what I want to see it do, which it's probably not going to do if it has a sync ID. We'll see. What's that? That must be the untitled one. All right, so you said, please add all these to your Twitch description. So I use Restream, and I am not quite sure how the Twitch description works, but it seems that the Twitch description doesn't get updated when I update Restream. And so I'd have to go do that manually, which maybe I should. At the very least, I should include the basic stuff that's always there. And then I don't have to include the stuff that's maybe to this specific project or whatever. And instead, I could have a link to projects that I typically am working on during the stream. That way, I could say, yeah, and if you're on Twitch, check out this link, and then one of these 3 links is the project I'm working on. So that could make sense. What if the same post is being updated at the same time on 2 different systems with sync on? So this is something that is something that you do have to worry about in certain systems, but it's not something that I need to worry about in this system. The reason being that it is impossible for me to be in exactly 2 places at once. So it is impossible for me to be on this computer and on my other computer at the same time. Now, I do want to be able to expand this to be collaborative so that somebody else could work on a blog article with me. However, at that point, it would need to be a WebSocket-based editing system, not a post-based editing system. And it's and I'd be using WebRTC for that, and it would be a completely different project. So there are cases where it's really important that you resolve all conflicts, and there are cases where winner wins is fine. And I'm choosing to go with winner wins in this because I know that I myself cannot be in more than one place at a time. And if I implement versions, then if I do happen to run into a conflict because for some reason, internet's not working on this computer, but then I go to my other computer and I make an edit and then I lose the edit here. If I have versions implemented, then I could just say, oh, wait, I thought I wrote something about this, and I could go click and look at previous versions. And then I could say, it was the version from that computer had it, and I could copy it and then switch back and paste. But I don't know if I want to get that far with this. I think I might be okay with saying, well, sometimes you lose data when you're working on something in two different places, and that just happens. If you overwrite what you were working on, you overwrote what you were working on. With sync off, then sync together. Sometimes, yeah. So it's just not something that I'm that worried about. If the situation arises, if I find that this is a problem for me, then I will investigate it further. But and I reference in Creeds of Craftsmanship, Toward Go 2. Toward Go 2 has a section about the Go authors making choices, delaying their choices. Even though they knew it was possible to have a bug, they delayed the choice to decide how to fix the bug until it had actually occurred and they understood the problem better. And it was precisely a time-based bug. So I defer to that. And also, in the face of ambiguity, refuse the temptation to guess. As one of the Python values, that that problem is not yet important enough for me to solve, even though it's possible. The risk to me is rather low. And even if the risk is high, the danger is low. Is that the right way to phrase that? Because there's the risk of something happening, and then there's the impact of it actually happening. So if it's 90% likely to happen, but the impact is insignificant, who cares? Likewise, if it's really unlikely to happen and really insignificant, who cares? It has to be fairly likely to happen and fairly likely to cause a problem to care. So that's my thoughts on that. Okay, so with that set, I don't know if there's much that I can do here. Wait, what is this? How is this? And so this is when... All right, we don't need the backup keys, I don't think. Maybe we do, actually. I don't know. I don't think we need the backup keys. I'm going to delete them. This is all test data anyway, so I'm going to blow it all away. That's a backup key. That's a backup key. Do we have any more backup keys? Can we sort this? Why can we not sort this? This is something that we definitely should be able to click on and have it sort, Whatever. So currents, yeah, okay, so this post doesn't mean anything. Data and meta, okay, so this is the untitled one. There's always an untitled one. But then this one has nothing, but the metadata has something? Oh, okay, so it has a title, but doesn't have a body. That makes sense. Last sync, we can go ahead and get rid of that because we now have last sync down and last sync up. Okay. Current just refers to what's currently loaded if I were to refresh the page. And the data is empty on these because whatever reason. Wait a minute. Oh, okay. Duh. It's like, what? Is this an empty string? What is this? No, it's just a blank row, dummy. Okay, so what I should see, do we have a sync ID on all these? So this one has a sync ID. So we're not going to create at. But let's see, what's the updated at on this? This should, okay, if I refresh at this point, it should try to update everything, I think, which is what we want. We want to test that if I log in here, is it going to update everything? And by the way, I'm really glad, Rasputin Rock, that you decided to engage and ask some questions. I really appreciate that. It's really awesome. Can't cannot read properties, undefined reading, update that. Okay, let's go see what that's about. But I was going to say, to those of you that are watching, even if you just say hello, I really appreciate it. It's really nice to have people say hello and to start that conversation. Okay, cannot read of undefined. See, this is how you know it's spaghetti code. Okay, resp. So resp.body didn't do the trick here. No, that should do. That should do. Okay, so I was thinking about this wrong. Because resp is body if we do resp.json. Somebody should have told me that. Somebody should have seen that. Okay, so the way that it was before was actually correct. I was getting confused with at root request. Because that one, I have a to.json. But here, that's not the problem. So really, this is sufficient. This should work. So what I might want here, though, is let body equal. And then let's do a console.log debug. Again, I always use log for things I'm getting rid of. If it's something that I want to keep for debugging, I do console.debug, and then I wrap it with an if debug mode or whatever. And then console.info is things that I plan to keep. .log is for me to know, oh yeah, that's something I meant to get rid of. And then I usually prefix it with debug just because. So we're going to say this is do create, and here's the body. And then we can return body, and we can call that good. And then let's just take these three things here, and let's also bring them down to here. And I used to actually care more about making sure that as I copy and pasted there was alignment, but now that I use Prettier and I just write the file and everything updates, I don't worry about that as much anymore. Oh, whoops. Doc, not do. Okay. All right, so let's try this one more time. Going to refresh. Going to click GitHub sign in. And it looks like everything went right that time, but cannot read properties of undefined. So let's look at debug, doc update. This was correct. So I'm guessing that I must have referenced something quite incorrectly. Post.uuid, save, post. Postmodel.save. Okay, so let's walk that back in the stack. 685. Okay, no, that was the one. Yeah, okay, that's the same one here and here. So let's walk that back a little bit more. 455. Sync hook post. So am I not returning post from sync hook? It looks like I'm returning post. This is an async function. Am I not awaiting? I am awaiting. I am calling catch die, but this will rethrow. So I'm not really clear. I'm going to have to look at this. Because if this isn't failing, then I don't see how this could be failing. Is there, oh, there are other returns here. Right. Okay. So how might I want to approach this? This is another indicator to me that some of the logic in here is wrong, because as I consider, okay, what should this return? I don't want to, here it makes sense to return this, but this essentially is an error. Is it an error that I want to throw on? If we say that sync was not successful, we kind of want to continue on to the next one, right? Am I already handling that case? No, we don't want to continue on to the next one in this particular case. Okay, oh, excuse me. Then I think I will throw an error here instead, and then in both of these places I could return post. But there's a couple issues here. One, I'm passing in post and I'm returning post, which seems a little bit weird, whatever. And I think that I could say, I'm going to get back some information from this sync. And if I get back information, then I'm going to update post. So I think this I mentioned this earlier, but I think this is further validating that thought process. However, if I start using sync hooks somewhere else than right here, which I will, that would mean that I would then have to take that logic somewhere else. And I do want to have that updated, which means that maybe I should move this into here. And that seems, let's see, that's post model. That seems like that might be the correct way to go about it. And then it doesn't feel awkward to have this post equals post. We can just ditch that entirely. So I think that's the strategy I'm going to go with. That seems like that's going to lead to the right associations of things. So let's go ahead and move this into here. Let's not return anything, which we don't even need to return because we're not returning early and we're not returning anything. And then we can get rid of this here. And I think that that is the most appropriate way to go about this. And we're not changing the updated at anymore. So we're adding a sync ID. But we really only need to save it again if we change something about it. So I guess I would do this. If not post.syncID, this seems appropriate. And then I would want to actually move these again to after, because we only want to save it if it was successful. Well, I guess you could argue either way for that. But yeah, for this one, I think those should come last. This shouldn't throw an exception, but whatever. I'm not going to update the updated at. In fact, I'm going to say, don't do this. Keep local updated for local sync logic. Because that's something I might be tempted to do in the future, or could I just remove it? I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to go check the comments now. Okay, so no new comments. Oh. All right, I think that's appropriate. All right, I'm going to refresh again, log in again, and let's go check the console for errors this time. There are no errors this time, but let's go back to the application tab and let's get rid of our sync uptime. And is there anything else that I should get rid of? We got some empty data, but this is fine just because we only have a title and we don't have any body. I guess technically meta might not be the right word because this includes information, excuse me, that isn't just meta. Let me go through these real quick. Whatever. Yada, yada. Okay. And this one. Yes. Yahoo. Sure, we'll just accept that bad spelling. It's so great. It is great. And then untitled. Let me just leave it. It's fine the way it is. Okay. So now let's go ahead and refresh one last time and sign in, hopefully one last time. No errors popped up, and let's check the console. I don't see any errors there. So let's look at the networking tab. But here's something that's concerning. I would expect that I would see 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 things updating. But instead, I only see 1 updating. And that makes me think that maybe my sort is wrong. So I'm going to put a console.log in my reducer for the promise. And I'm going to console.log post. And in fact, this, I could do this. I actually will. this is inefficient in one sense. And that we're adding a bunch of loops in here, but it is relatively easy to read. Get posts rather than IDs. And then we've got post A and post B, and I don't need to do this. So then I can just do A.updated, B.updated, and that makes more sense. And then when I go to reduce, just put my debug in here. Debug post update. Okay. Because what I'm afraid might be happening is it may actually be getting the reverse of what I think it's supposed to be doing. It may be sorting backwards, although I could have sworn, let me go check my cheat sheet here, sorting from 0 to infinity. So this should end up with, and I should update this to show explicitly, this should end up with 1, 11, 37, 42, 1000 if we do A minus B versus B minus A. Yeah, so this should do ascending sort if my note to myself is correct. Which that makes sense because A minus B would give you a negative number and B minus A would give you a positive number. So you'd go from negative numbers to positive numbers. That would make sense. Anyway, let's go back here, go to the application tab, go ahead and kill the sync update, and then go ahead and refresh and we'll see what we get. And I'm just going to go ahead and Command K on this, and then go to the Network tab, Command K. Oh, Command K doesn't work on the Network tab. Interesting. But let's go ahead and clear it that way then. We'll go back here, log in. Login should work fine. And then now we see post update, post update, post update. And what do we see in the Network tab? We only see one update. So let's take a look. Why is this being skipped? So updated gives us 919.134. And this next one is 925. And the next one is 919. No, oh, I was looking at created. So this one essentially should be 0. So I don't know how that happened. What typo did I make here? Something is wrong. Let A date equal. Let B date equal. So we've got A date minus B date. And then we need a console.log A date, B date. And then let's do A date minus B date. Because something's definitely wrong, because this one that has no date, no updated. So here we have updated 919.134. Here we have no updated. Here we have updated is 925. That's correct. Here we have updated is 925. That one was 15, 17. This one is also 15, 17. That one is later. So they look like they're happening later. Okay, and this one is updated 15. So these happen to be in the correct order, except for this one is not in the correct order. This one should come first because it should end up with the 0 date. So I don't know how that's happening. And then when it comes to the sync hook, if there's no sync ID, we're going to create it. Otherwise, if, and then we could do, or again, I'm going to take this 0 out. And I'm going to make this a const. And let's actually change 0 date into 0 date so that it looks like a const. And then I'm going to bring this up to the top of this function. Could bring it up to the top of the file, but I don't think that's necessary right now. Okay, so it's greater than last sync up. Then we should get this. Otherwise, console.log debug skip old post. And oh, I should change this into a throw. And indeed, this is a true exception because that would mean the server's down or something. Yeah, we'll get rid of the return there. That's fine. Okay, so let me refresh this. And by the way, if you can see what's wrong, please let me know, by all means. Okay, so we've got some definite differences in the sort date. This is what's odd. What I don't see here is I don't see the 0, which I would expect to see. Now, was I somehow limiting those out beforehand in terms of the IDs? Maybe, because maybe this one, well, it shouldn't show up if it doesn't have an ID. So updated. All right, let's see if we see the skip. Skip old post, skip old post, skip old post. I'm a little bit confused. Okay, let's see post update, post update. All right, last sync up. And let's see, how is last sync up being handled? So it should be 0 to start because I deleted every time. And then maybe I need to do .value of here. That would be smart. I mean, that should have been an implicit conversion, but I didn't mean for it to be implicit, so it's good to do this. Oh, there we go. That's my problem, is I kept this like so. And that's it right there. So this should have been post.updated is what this should have been. And this should have been new date post.updated. So let's call this resp date. Oh, bless me. And in this case, since I'm not going to use it, I think it might be appropriate to just put that here because we're just checking the value of the response now, making sure that this looks right. And I do want to put some other things in the response, such as the size. We live in a broken society because we have a broken monetary system. Interesting. So unfortunately, since you are watching from the beginning, Ryan, I cannot answer. I'm not really, it wasn't as much a political comment about the elections as much as it is that humanity doesn't work in a sane, logical fashion that is clearly for its benefit. It's an organic, random system that has things that happen that are well structured and good, and things that happen that are not well structured, and things that happen that are evil, and that we cannot count on the thing that provides clear and obvious benefit that is non-controversial to necessarily be the thing that is the winning idea or philosophy. So hopefully if you just use the little scrubber in YouTube, you would get to the point where you could see that your comment has appeared and maybe get to here. And so I don't think that a monetary system is necessarily a reflection of how broken or not broken society is. But I would certainly say a system of values. I don't think of it as money as much as economics, because the way that we perceive and exchange value is related to money, but it's more about economics. But I think it goes back to the fault of humans more than the fault of the systems that we create. Because if we were to fix the systems, we would create broken systems again. And those who are able to market, which is to create perceived value better than others, would still succeed in swaying huge portions of the population. We just have different tools now, and so things can happen on a global scale. But the way that humans perceive things incorrectly and judge things incorrectly based on our biological evolution of whatever it's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of years, our brains have not all caught up and have not all caught up equally. There's a huge disparity between somebody who has an IQ of, say, 60 and someone who has an IQ of 130. And 5 out of every 100 people will have an IQ in the realm of 60, and 5 out of every 100 people will have an IQ that's in the realm of 130. I think that's it. Or maybe it's 98%. So maybe it's only 2 on each side. But I think that the way that the IQ curve is developed is such that, not 60, 70. I think 100 is designed to be the average. And then above 100, as you tend towards 130, you get to somewhere in the close to 99%. And as you tend towards 70, you get somewhere close to 99%, meaning, well, actually inverse. What I mean by that is you get close to 1% and close to 1%. And then as you extend beyond that to, say, genius at 160 and tomato at 40, which I don't know if that's possible, but it must be. I haven't looked that far down the spectrum, but then you get into the 1/1,000,000th or 1/1,000,000,000th or something in that nature. Very few people extend out that far. So anyway, there's just, we have huge, and it's a huge difference in what a person is capable of accomplishing and understanding in the relative time that it would take to understand it to make a decision between somebody that has an IQ of 70 and a person that has an IQ of 130. That is not a small difference, as in, it takes this person 10 minutes longer. It could be, it takes this person, I don't know exactly what it is, but I think that it's it's big. It's a big difference. It's a big difference. And so people that have higher IQs or that follow systems of people that have developed ways to, I don't know, even that breaks down, because people with high IQs make really dumb decisions, because I don't know why. I don't know how somebody can have such a high IQ and have such a poor perception of how systems work in the world. I think maybe part of it is, as you tend towards a higher IQ, you're less capable of emotional intelligence, maybe. And so people think Teravangian in the Stormlight archives. Teravangian has days where he's so incredibly intelligent that he actually becomes stupid, because his intelligence has progressed so far that he is not capable of understanding simple things that any average person would be able to understand. He's not able to think at their level. And on Teravangian's stupid days, he is such an emotional creature with so little understanding of complex concepts that he can only operate from an emotional perspective, and doesn't have the ability to command change. So Teravangian is obviously fictional character and not representative of real life, but the metaphor, I think, is an interesting one. So now I've gone off on that rant and lost everyone. Oops. Sorry. But such is the way of things. Okay, back to code. Back to the codes. So, yeah, I don't know. Now this thought's in my mind. I don't want to be overly political or philosophical, but my beliefs tend towards my code style as well. So I don't want to try to bombard people with, I don't want to, I'm not trying to persuade people to be on one side or another of a idealism spectrum outside of coding, but I am trying to persuade people to pick up solid, defensible ideals within coding, and some of these other things come into play from a perspective. I don't know. Maybe they don't. I'll just move on now. Okay, so let me hit undo a couple of times so I can see what I last did and know where I was at before. The wrong thinker, Ryan. So the joke with Ryan, because his YouTube comments were getting censored for a little bit. Now it seems that I've accepted him hard enough that they're letting him through now. But yeah, I was joking that he's a wrong thinker because the censorship gods have decided that he is not allowed. But then again, like, that's a political thing, and it's algorithms, but it's also politics, and it's belief systems. Somebody decided that free speech, of being able to express ideas that are bad or stupid or scammy or something. But Ryan doesn't have messages that sound scammy. I don't know how an AI would flag his message as spammy. So it makes me think that it's flagging his message as wrong thinky. But, so somebody made that decision, and this does affect the world that we code in. And I think that's important, because more and more people are going to be designing systems that have quote unquote artificial intelligence. I think a lot of people don't know that artificial intelligence is just a spreadsheet that keeps a score with statistical values of standard deviation, or some such similar to that. I mean, I don't even understand it that well, but I do understand it well enough to know that it is not artificial intelligence in the general artificial intelligence sense. It is artificial intelligence in the sense that you say, hey, system, do this thing. And then the system does what you tell it to do, and then it learns more of what you told it to do. So whatever bias you start the system with, the system grows in that bias. And life is biased. So if you try to create a system that can Pareto distribution. The Pareto distribution is inevitable, and it's not necessarily bad. It's just along which metrics does the Pareto distribution take effect, and can you discern from... So Pareto distribution is the 80-20 rule. The rich tend to get richer. The poor tend to get poorer. The solar systems tend to group tighter together. The vast space tends to expand away from itself. And it's not just the 80-20 rule, but it goes further and further. You have the 1%. This is still part of the Pareto distribution. As systems in the universe run their course, there is a natural phenomenon that things tend towards one way or another, and this is not moral or amoral. It can look moral or amoral, but it is just that the whole universe follows this principle. And so you can't fight it. You can flip-flop it maybe, but then the flip-flop will probably be as equally as bad as whatever it was that it was before. Okay, so I'm going to refresh again, and this time we should see no updates. Whoops. So let's see. And then I am going to change this. Oh, interesting. Huh. Well, that's not desirable. Updated at. Okay. All right, so the problem here, which I do need to preserve somehow, is that when I'm getting updates that are new, I need to make sure that from the server's perspective, they're new. But from the local perspective, they're old. So if they exist and they are older, I don't want the older version to take precedence over the newer version. So let's solve that problem. So this is where I'm going to need to go to the items. And there are the items. So Ryan, when you do get up to this point, and you can leave a comment that I'll probably already be gone, but I don't know if I can see. If I'm still here, I'll see it in the top chat. Otherwise, you'll have to leave it in the regular comments. But I am really curious what brings you to the stream. Or are you just listening to this in the background, or what is it that provokes your joining it? Thanks for linking to the playlist. Always appreciate context. You are welcome, although I'm not quite sure when that's in reference to. But I think it's that Utah JS playlist. I link to the whole thing when I link to a video or the Beyond Code. Okay. Anyway, for item of items, again, I could have done a reduce here, or can I do a for each here? Why am I doing a for here? Normally I do not do a for. It must be because I'm doing an await inside, right? Yeah. Okay, that's why, because I'm doing an await inside. And I guess I could have done the reduce, and maybe I would have liked that more. Anyway, so we're going to decrypt. Okay, let's break that out. Oh, no, okay. No, this is actually acceptable. Ah. Oh, no, it broke. Can we find out why it broke? So this is the problem with Ale, is that occasionally it will, when it does its asynchronous checking, it'll still have a line in the buffer in the wrong place. Let's see. Let's go back to the items. Let's go to for. There we go. I rarely use for. Oh. Okay. So this I actually agree does not need to be separated because they are both checking things that it's not handling it. Okay, I can get rid of the debugs now. Let's get rid of these debugs. I think that's appropriate. There's probably some other debugs I can get rid of. Let me do my little XXX trick here and then go look for the debugs. Yeah, that one's fixed. This one's fixed. This one's fixed. This one's fixed. This one's out of the way, out of the way. Okay, so that's all good. And that one I don't know. Oh, that one I already handled a while ago, so we can get rid of that one. And what I do want... And then actually, I do not want this to remain here because I'm going to be doing screen shares. And so I don't want my real token to show up in the logs once I get to the point of deploying this. So I'll have to go check all the infos. I don't know why I made that one an info. I think it's because for the purposes of the demo, it was correct. But for the purposes of going out of demo, it was not correct. Maybe I should have used debug there. Yeah, I think because I copied this code from a demo in which it did make sense to say console.info these things because the purpose of the demo was to show that it happens. The demo was a debug demo, as it were. All right. I'm kind of hungry. I'm going to have to go get something to eat in a little bit. Maybe once I get this part that I'm doing done, which, to be honest, I kind of forgot what part that was. Okay, so I'm trying to get the value last... Oh, there's my XXX. XXXX, yeah. Last sync down... This makes sense. That's appropriate. I got our synced at. That's appropriate. Now what's not appropriate is the save here. Maybe. Hold on. Item. Okay, so we have a post. So let's call this sync post, synced post, remote post, our post. I don't know what to call it. Let's go with synced post because it's not necessarily updated is the thing. That's what we need to discern here. So let's see if I can go through this whole loop here and let's say post synced post is what we want to do. Can I find, yeah, that, no, yes, 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 yes. Okay, so what we don't know is that we necessarily intend to update the local. So what we need to do is pull the local post. And this is where I'm going to need to implement something new that doesn't exist in the current post model. Because right now I have a get or create because I basically if I just needed to get or create all the time. Now I need to implement something that's just a get. And I might want the get or create to call the get. We'll see. We'll see what this turns out to look like. Do I have my TypeScript stuff turned on right now? My type linting? Don't get confused. I'm not using TypeScript. I'm just using type linting, which uses the TypeScript compiler. It's okay. I haven't been corrupted. I'm still not a bad person. Mostly. Just a little bit. Sometimes. Okay. This is so small that it seems that I could just repeat it, but also I think it's actually important. I have changed this in the past. I mean, it seems too trivial. This is just such a tiny wrapper. But again, it does turn out to be important. I think that what I might want in this, we got to get item, blah, 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 or can we do null here? And then up there, I could do or object. I think that might be an appropriate way to go about this. Because null will successfully parse as JSON as null, which is what we want. Of course, this would be more readable. Let's do this in the more readable fashion. So let JSON equal to, or I could say string, if not JSON, return null. Return parse JSON. What do you think? Is this better written this way versus the way that was written before was this way? I think it's a little tiny bit easier to reason about. I prefer it. Going with it. Okay. Oh, wait. But that became get or create, but this should just be get, not get or create. So we're still doing, and this now is, now I forget the way to do this. I forget if, I think question mark means that it can be null. Do I even have in here the tsconfig? I don't think I even have tsconfig in here. I should do, was it tsc init? And then I have to go update those 10 things. Somebody that had suggested that I make a little script to create the correct things. And I think they're right. At first I said, well, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to do that because it's just these few options that you check. But I'm now running into enough cases where I need to twiddle those couple of bits. And there are enough of them and there's enough nuance to it that even though I'm only editing a couple of lines, it is starting to make sense that perhaps that's what I should do. And I think I have this over in, I think I moved it to the Beyond Code because I think I got it to the point where it was good enough to warrant being in the Beyond Code repo. So I don't remember who said that to me. I think it was at a meetup. No, it was during a live stream. I think it was during a live stream, somebody said. But okay, so I am coming to believe that you were correct, that this is complex enough that it does in fact deserve its own little utility just to twiddle the couple of bits that need to be twiddled. Okay. Key configuration. Let's do the include. And in this case, we're not going to do the server. Oh, wait. My problem here is I have not learned how to do it for the browser yet. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. That is a topic for a different day. Because up to this point, I've done it for Node. But I don't know the special configuration that I'm going to need to do in order to say, hey, things are in the global namespace. Let them be in the global namespace. I don't know that the TypeScript checker can work for... I will do a little tiny Google, a little tiny one, just to see. TypeScript check browser files. I think that it has to be either CommonJS or ES modules. No module system. Which is not true. It is a module system. It's window. It's TypeScript without module loader. There we go. I might still be able to do this, but it wouldn't maybe be as nice as I would like, because I think I would have to end up putting everything into a separate file. Hold on, I'm going to check what these questions and answers are about. Unable to verify leaf signature. Okay. Oh, wow. All right. That's an appropriate one, I think. All right, TypeScript without module loader. Let me bring this back over. I'm stuck with old software, blah, 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 blah. Of course you can. You have to configure TSC to output code without a module loader. That's not what I'm looking for. Compiler options. Module. None. All right. Well, if somebody knows how to get TypeScript to work on regular browser files without any transpilation or TypeScript, or just getting the type linting, because I found out how to do it with Node, and that's what this repository is all about. And I should probably make a quicker cheat sheet. But this is kind of well, the video explains it fairly well, but I guess I could cut to the chase more with this part right here, key configuration being up top rather than all the way down. I think also I found a solution to one of these other problems. But anyway, yeah, I would love to know how to use the TypeScript linting with browser files, but if you want to use it with Node, this right here, Beyond Code Bootcamp, JS doc, TypeScript starter, this is a great place to be. And if you find anything there, add it to the issues, and I will update as I go. Let's see, how escape special characters. Yep, most of this stuff I already have there. Yeah, I came up with this is how you do that. Okay, cool. So this is being updated as I figure out how to do things. So yeah, feel free to, and I'll drop this in the comments as well. Yes. Yes, in fact, Ryan, that is true. That is why I do 4x's. Because I am, in fact, concerned about the use of triple X for... I don't exactly know why. I don't know in what context it could be misinterpreted, but I'm thinking more in the lines of being misinterpreted probably by a machine than by a human. I don't know. But yes, that is exactly why I use quadruple X's, is because the triple X already has another name and a domain. That's the other thing, is that before in documentation, you might write .xxx with 3 X's to refer to put whatever you want here, but then .xxx actually became a real domain. So I think it's little things like that that have happened over the years that have caused me to go to 4 X's, because I certainly don't want to be linking anyone to example.xxx. Who knows what's there? Wow. Okay. I guess I could be responding to you in real time, even though you're back at that point. Yes, you are correct about the quad. Particularly, there are things like example.1234, which would be actually valid otherwise. Or I wonder if YouTube is allowing these comments through. It looks like it is. I don't need to worry about that. Okay. Anyway, back to the problem at hand, and then I'm going to go get a sandwich or something. Oh, well, it's already 4 too. The problem at hand was... It was that I'm trying to figure out how to make sure... Oh, I was doing... this is what got us off on the tangent, was that I was trying to remember how you represent null if it's a question mark. Because I think you can also do or null, but I think that it's better written as question mark. And then if you put brackets around it, that signifies undefined, which of course is not the same as null. So there's multiple ways to represent something as optional. Because of the sordid history of almost everything, including JSDoc, JSDoc does not have good, concise ways of doing things just one way that work. You have to do things in different ways depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And then, yeah, you've got different versions of JSDoc, different versions of TypeScript. Yeah, what do you do? Okay, so in the signin.js file, which of course does not mean signin.js, which of course, this is the spaghetti code where I'm just throwing stuff in here. The started as the sign in, but then I'm saying, oh, well, on sign in, we need to sync. Okay. So let's get back to the problem at hand, which is that we want to check for a local sync. And it's fine to change that last sync down value. In fact, okay, and we're changing it here. Updated once at the end. And I think this might be something that belongs in settings. We'll see where it belongs, or config. I don't know exactly what to call it. I did rant earlier about how if a module is called something like config, then you probably are doing it wrong. But it probably is not always. There are times when it seems appropriate that the view model that you are concerned with is the config view model. So you would have a package for that, or the controller model, or whatever. Anyway. I'm just saying it's one of those words that can be. Utils is and lib. Those are particularly concerning package names. Anyway, so yes, we want to check for local post is going to be post model.get, and then we should be able to see synced post.uid. Is that correct? Or was it just sync post.id? Item dot. Curse myself. All right, let me go look in here. Can I be self-consistent? Why? Why can I be self-consistent? Okay, it is UUID. I have called it UUID. Good. If only I were better at life. Okay, so what we might want to say, we're trying to figure out when do we say that we ought to continue. I don't know how we could get in a situation where a local post does not have a sync ID and its related post does have a sync ID. So that's a pikputie, if you will. That means question mark in Albanian. Because I speak Albanian. Well, I used to. I used to speak it fluently. I used to speak it natively. Or at least people would think that I was just from a different part of the country. So I consider that natively. When people ask you, "Oh, are you from up north?" Then you've achieved native status. You know, it's pretty darn good. I do not speak it that well anymore because there's no one to speak it with. When I lived there, it was awesome to learn and speak the language. But okay, so if localhost. So what we're trying to figure out is, should we skip this? So if localhost and what? Localhost.updated. New date updated or 0, which this should not happen. If it does happen, it's indicative that there's an error. So let's go ahead and let that be an error. Well, the problem is that this does not throw a parse error. That's the problem. Hence the 0. But this will still end up being true. Yeah, so I'm going to put in the 0 here. 0, was it 0 date? I'm going to put that in there because it is better to have a real value than an error value from my perspective. And this is acknowledging that I realize that an error could happen, but if an error does happen, the thing to do about it would probably be just to overwrite this. Okay, so let's say last sync date. I don't actually want last sync date. I want synced post dot updated. Okay. And maybe this is complex looking enough that this should go elsewhere. So let's say local updated. Let's do it that way. I think that's better. Local updated. Oh, I see we got a comment out of the corner of my eye. And then synced updated. I'm going to check that in just a second, but I'm going to finish this so I don't get distracted. If local updated is greater than synced updated, then we did update the sync date, but we're just going to ignore it. And I'm going to put down here debug. Choosing winner wins strategy. Older synced post ignored. But you know what we could do here and would be reasonable to do here is we could just like I did with the key. Well, we don't have that anymore. But let me go find where I had this in here. Backup. Back. Did I not? Hold on. Back. No. Backup? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go back to do this. Here's what I'm going to do. This is a case of conflict. And so just, in the rare case, we could always turn this into the versioning bit later. So we'll do post. What is the right way to go about this? I guess I need a save backup, maybe, or a version. Save version. Yeah, maybe we do this post model.save version. And then I will do synced update. Go synced post. Synced post. And that way I'm not losing data. It's still there, and then I can build in the future, I can build a way to read it. Ha! Time travel commenting was fun and all, but I just caught up with you now. No more 2x. You're half as interesting. Well, that's exactly what a wrong thinker would say. But that was an interesting cackle, wasn't it? Okay. So if the local version is more up to date than the updated version, then we will just create a new version for the synced post, and we'll save it somewhere that we worry about it later. So this will be the beginning of our versioning. So see, and so the person that originally I was having this conversation with, I don't know if he's on the stream any longer. It was way back in the Rasputin Rock. But this is precisely the emergent design principle / delayed decision making, where we reap the benefits. As I am coming into the point of the code where I am finding out, here's where a problem can happen that realistically will happen because I've gotten to that point in the code. I've delayed my decision until I am here, and now that I am here, it seems rather clear to me the right way to handle this type of conflict. So this I say is a testament to the idea of having valuing emergent design and in the face of ambiguity, refuse the temptation to guess, letting yourself catch up to the problem before deciding how to solve the problem. Okay, so we're going back into the blog.js, which is where the post model is. And we're going to have save, and we're going to have a save version. And we'll see what this ends up meaning. But I think we want it to be something like this, is what I was thinking. But at the end, so let's say version. Can I do that? Can I do plus version here? Plus version. Yeah, let's do that. And so what we'll do is we'll have ops. Actually, this is what we're going to do. So I'm going to have an underscore save that's the real save. And then the non-underscore save is going to return whatever the save returns. Oh, I mean, like this. There we go. And the version will be nothing. And then we'll have our save version. Let me bring this back up here. There we are. And then this we'll do the same way, but we will call it backup or version, whatever we want to call it. Let's call it version. That seems to make sense. And then we will want it to be the ISO date. So we'll do new date post updated or our 0 dates, which, because I'm in a different file and a little copying is better than a little dependency, I'm not going to bring that over. I'm just going to create the same thing. And let's see, updated, yes, we are expecting to be a string in this format, so that makes sense. If updated were expected to be a number, then I would do or 0. I'm just trying to keep parity. .to ISO string. And actually, maybe I just want to do d.to ISO string here. And we can call this D. That's a little easier to read. And then perhaps I'll update this to using a template string, or perhaps I won't, because I've made a determination to not put anything other than variables in template strings. Gotta have principles. Okay. So and let me make sure I didn't already have an underscore save. Okay, good, because that would be a very common thing for me to do. I'm glad that you enjoyed my cackle. Okay. So, Ryan, what are you doing here, man? You got nothing better to do on a Saturday than watch some old fogey code? Are you working on something? You don't have, I mean, if it's an embarrassing answer, you don't have to tell me. Okay, save version. So I think this is good now. Let me just double check. So we've got a synced post, which is guaranteed to exist at this point, right? Yeah, so we're going to continue if it's not the right type. And I can't imagine how we would get the wrong type into the database anyway. Okay. Older synced posts saved as version. Choosing winner win strategy. Local, more recent post is kept. Older synced post saved as alternate version. Okay, so we're just going to leave that in there. And is there anything about this that we would still want? I don't think so, because I don't think we really need to worry about the sync ID. Well, maybe we do. If it does have a sync ID, which I don't know how that could possibly happen. That seems an impossible condition. It can't both have been synced and not have a sync ID. So we don't need to worry about that condition. So I'm just going to put a comment here. Local post is guaranteed to have a sync ID by all rational logic. Okay, and then decrypted. I guess I can just get rid of this. All right, so we've dealt with conflict resolution. And I guess, let's see, what do we want to say about saving this? If it's the exact same version, then maybe we don't care to save it. I'm just going to put that as a to-do. Because then we have to calculate exact same version, and I think that should be done by a checksum, not by a timestamp. I think we should compare that. Well, it doesn't have to be a checksum. It could just be, well, checksum's pretty simple. Select the keys you want to checksum against. Or you select the keys you want to check against and just check that they're all equal. Either one would work. But in any case, I don't want to handle this problem right now, so I'm just going to put a to-do. Don't resave items that haven't changed. And then there was one more thing I wanted to take care of, which is there's a greater than or equal to somewhere, or maybe it's a less than or equal to. Let me try to find it. Greater than or equal to. Since. Maybe this was on the server side. I think it is on the server side. Let me jump over to the server side real quick. Here we are. And let's see where sense is being handled. Oh. List items since. So I think in my, this is probably in lib user. Yeah, there we go. Last updated at greater than or equal to. I think I'm going to switch this to a greater than. Well, I just did switch it to a greater than. I definitely switched it to a greater than. Because I don't want to get that last item every time. And just be saving it as a version. Yeah, I don't think that adds really much benefit. Change sense to, let's see. I don't know, is this a feature? Is this a refactor? Is it a chore? It's a change of some sort. Let's call it a bug fix. We don't, yeah, sense should compare, not listing items should compare since greater than not. Wait. Updated at greater than since. Fair. Okay, let's go back. And again with the Command K. Let's clear the screen there. Okay, so that makes sense to me now. I think this is a good place for a whip and for me to go get something to eat. Okay. And maybe clear out a little bit of the console messages too. Let's see. We've got a refresh token. Yeah, let me get rid of some of the stuff that when this is pushed live, I definitely don't want it to be around. I came for the crypto stuff. I stay for the coding and life gems. A little copying has been a little dependency. I can justify it at 2x, sometimes pause and multitask and resume 2x. Okay, that makes sense. Well, creedsofcraftsmanship.com if you want all the gems. Although life gem, I don't know that's a life gem. And that's a coding gem. Yeah, you said coding and life gems. Okay, so parentheses, multiplication, coding gems, and life gems. Not multiplication. What do we call that? Association? Associative? What's the term for that? When if you put the parentheses around something and you take the thing outside, it applies to all the things inside. There's a specific term. And let's swap this over to debug and get rid of it. I don't care about the items much anymore. I can look at that in console if I want it. And I could have sworn I just got rid of these, but whatever. Oh, maybe it's for the two different mabobs. One's for GitHub and the other one's for Google. Okay, let's see. What do we get if we just look for console around here? Some warns, some debugs, some errors. Warn log. That I don't think I need that in there anymore. I'll leave it in for now. I'll leave that in there for now. I'll leave that's perfectly fine. All of that looks right, and I don't need to worry about the passphrase stuff. That's a different repo. Okay. So I think I'm ready to stage all of these things. I'm going to clear out the console and do a little refreshy McRefresh and then see what we get here. I'm not worried about that refresh error because, like I said, I haven't implemented that yet. And the difference is that if I implement that, then I won't have to click GitHub sign in every time. It'll do it automatically, essentially. Set hash to post. That's great. And I should see, oh, I don't get to see set hash to whatever. Oh, because it's not the default. So there we go. There's your crypto right there, Ryan. This is it. Eyebrow, Cruise, Smart Lobster, Mean, Ski, Ken, Wealth, Drastic, Link Spray, Lawsuit, Mimic, Depth, Tip, Feel, Burger, Identify, Observe, Sphere, Year, Labor, Quantum Super. Now you have all my Dogecoins. Except I don't use them. Those generated randomly. Just, yeah, anyway. Okay, so one thing that I could do, if I wanted to, I could go through all of these and just set them all to null. I do need to have a way to delete remote from the remote, but I'm not too worried about that at the moment. Because what's going to happen is if I delete something on this computer, I need the sync hook to be well, I need to change the way my delete works. My delete should, in fact, delete all of the properties out of these things. So if I make my delete local work the way that I want it to work remote, then all will be well. So my delete should get rid of everything except for the sync ID and created, updated, and UUID. And then the other properties should be set to empty string and or null. And then that would be appropriate enough. And then I need to make it so that when it goes through, maybe there's a property that's, say, underscore deleted true. And that way it will still take up space on the server. I don't know if there's a good way. Or I could just have it, if that property, have the server look for a deleted property, and then the server can say, if I see the deleted property, then I will... no, because we want to propagate deletes across the system. If I delete it on one system, it needs to propagate to delete on the other system. So really, deletes will take up space. I could mark things deleted and say that deleted things don't count against your space or your number of articles. So that's what I need to do here. So we need to have some deleted things marked as null. Deleted things don't count against quotas. So we'll have some way to do that. We did fix this one. We did a little bit of general refactoring. So I'm going to count general refactoring as done, but we will need to do some refactoring again. We're just still not far enough for me to think that the sync code is ready for refactoring. There's more things to implement. I don't think, and we have some amount of versioning done. So versioning it's not presented to the user, but it is handled in a way that's acceptable. The data is not lost in case of sync conflict, at least. There probably will be more versioning we want to do in the future, and we'll want to expose it in a way to look at it. But the important thing right now is the data doesn't get lost. And that's something, I'm okay pushing something that the data isn't lost, it's just not accessible, because then, even though I'm the only person using this, but I want to build this as if other people were using it too. And maybe some people are. A couple of people told me that they thought it was a great idea and that they wanted to use it. Who knows if they did. But yeah, I do want to design it both for myself, because I can make mistakes. And if I make mistakes, I don't want to lose data. And for others that... the data is at least there, and then if when I come into the case where I want to expose versions to myself, I can. I will check out these comments again momentarily. And I'm really excited when we get to the paywall. I've been in communication with a couple of different payment processors, one of which is anonymous, not the group anonymous, but as in they remain anonymous, so that they don't have any front-end components to the payment processing. It is not similar to Stripe in that Stripe gives you JavaScript on the front end, and so if somebody wants to know who's your payment processor, they just inspect whatever. Now, granted, I would have to also make sure that I do not leak who the payment processor is in the way that I create the API. And I do plan on potentially, we'll see. I do plan on potentially showing or live coding working with this payment processor, but I do like the idea of being kept anonymous, because I am a wrong thinker and I plan on doing some dangerous things. I do not mean that in the sense of actual danger. I mean that in the sense of things that are philosophically or politically challengeable. But I do not mean in the sense of harm to a person or financial or physical harm. Just to be clear on that. So that's not taken. Well, of course anybody could take it out of context. All you got to do is remove my explanation. But point being, for example, I run an encrypted relay service. I want to be able to take payments for that, and I don't want. There's some measures that I want to take so that the hosting service is kept anonymous as well as the payment processor, so that if or when someone who is another wrong thinker, who is a dangerous person such as Ryan, uses my service for something that is not against the terms of service in terms of causing physical or financial or reputation harm to someone. Well, reputation harm is kind of a rough one because sometimes people do wrong things and then that harms their reputation because other people expose what they've done. So let's take that one out of the mix. But basically, someone that is acting within the legal constitutional limits of what is, you know, I want my service to be useful to wrong thinkers, whether I agree with them or not, assuming that they are within the bounds of the law and of not doing something that is, to me, obvious, real harm, other than saying I disagree with you and I think your ideas are stupid, which I do not consider that to be real harm. But anyway, so because I am interested in going into these arenas, I am interested in making sure that my services are backed. And I still do plan on including things such as PayPal and Stripe and Apple Pay and Google Pay, because those are very convenient and people like those. And I want people to be able to conveniently sign up for my services. But I would prefer to start with a payment processor that I can keep in the event that those disappear for some reason. Because certainly someone could use my service in a way that someone doesn't agree with, and if Twitter groupthink takes place, which I doubt it will, because I doubt my service will garnish any real attention. But if that were to happen, I like the security of knowing that rather than trying to create something that will allow people who have controversial thoughts or opinions to express themselves and connect with others, not that that's the intent of it, but that will certainly happen, and that I don't disagree. I can disagree with you and still believe in your right to believe what you believe and say what you have to say, even if I really don't like it. But anyway, that whole thing. So that is again where code meets philosophy. But yeah, so that's going to be happen. So 3 lefts make a right, as it were. 2 falses. Wait, what is it? No, 2 knots. 2 knots can make a true, or 3 knots, depending on what you're starting with. Anyway, not and yeah, you can work that. Okay. All right, let me catch up on the comments real quick. Associative, that's the term. We're putting coding and life in parentheses. 2 wrongs, AJ and Ryan make a right. We shall see. Okay. Well, with this, it's time for me to do that whip commit. I'm feeling pretty good about things. And I guess I might as well include the to-do. Why not? So I'm just going to call this whip. And then all of these are basically going to get folded into one commit because I've got a bunch of non-working commits. And so when I do go to push this or rebase this into the main branch, I do want to solidify it as simply added syncing without all the little steps and bug fixes and all that in between, most likely. So I'll probably rebase and squash those. But anyway, what should I call this? Oh, wow. I haven't done a whip in too long. Oh, but you know what? Hold on. Passphrase.js we do not need because that one's part of a separate repository. Excuse me, that's just a dependency. So here we go. Whip. Refactor and sync based on update times. And that's what we got. Okay, with that, I'm off to get myself a little bit of something to eat, and we'll see. I probably want to take a break, and then I'll come back and continue to work on this. I'll be really happy if I get to the point where I can push this syncing logic to the public site. So right now I'm working off of the beta site, blissapi.rootprojects.org. This is Bliss. Rootprojects.org is my beta server, and bliss.js.org is the it's the live public site, but now we're going to have an API, and I got to host that somewhere. I think I actually will keep blissapi.rootprojects.org, or I might make it blissapi.therootcompany.com. Might be what I think I'll probably do that for the production site, or I might put it on Beyond Code. I don't know which site I'm going to put it off of, but it's probably going to be called blissapi. Some other domain that I own, and that's what bliss.js.org will connect with. But I would really like to get that done today, and then start working on the payment processor, and we'll see what happens. I might start working with something such as PayPal or Stripe before, just because these other couple of payment processors, they're smaller payment processors. They have more of an investigation because they want to make sure that people that are signing up for the service are people that are signing up for the service that share their values in generally doing good and not doing things that are deceptive or that cause real tangible harm. So they do some checks, and they do make sure that it is not, for example, they probably, well, I won't even go into it, but there are certain groups that they probably would not choose to host because their values are so far out of alignment with their own values. And these groups have a propensity to easily be interpreted and perhaps actually mean to cause harm. They do not accept those types of customers. But in that way, we are very similar and aligned. But so they have a checking process where they validate customers before they accept them, to make sure that despite the fact that they wish to take advantage of this service that is somewhat anonymous-ish from the perspective of how the connected ties and the being canceled, that they are in fact a group that is not high risk in their actual desired behaviors in terms of legal behaviors or tangible harmful behaviors. Anyway, that all out of the way. Thanks for joining in. If you liked it, give it a like, because if you like what you like, you get more of what you like. There you go. There's a life gem. And if you want to subscribe, hit the bell for personalized notifications. I always enjoy seeing y'all, especially the ones that show up regularly. It really does feel nice to have a little bit of a community, and I appreciate it. And so thank you for that. Ryan and Rasputin Rock. I hope I see Rasputin Rock again. Seemed like a nice guy or gal. And check for related and unrelated links down in the doobly-doo. Apparently they don't always show up correctly in the Twitch stream, but they are on the YouTube doobly-doo. So I think I'm going to go update my Twitch doobly-doo to point to the YouTube doobly-doo or the YouTube channel and some sort of gist or something, so that I can say, if you're on Twitch, go check this thing out. Anyway, all that aside, thanks for joining in. Adios.